Hello scholars and welcome to another exciting screencast in U.S. history. Today we're going to be focusing on the New England Colonies, Chapter 3, Section 2. By the end of the screencast, you should be able to tell someone off the street, in class, your parents, whoever, but you should be able to tell someone how religious beliefs and dissent influenced the New England Colonies. Section objectives. This time we do have 4. If you cannot accomplish the following after the screencast, you must either ask a peer for help, rewatch or reread the screencast, read the section, pages are posted in Google Classroom, or schedule a conference with me. First objective, describe the geography and climate of the New England colonies. So, New England is located in the northeastern corner of the United States, and it consists of the states listed in the image to the right, Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Much of New England is made up of hills and low mountains. A large area of that is covered in forest. The soil is thin and rocky, which makes farming difficult. There are narrow plains along the Atlantic coast. The Connecticut River is the region's longest river, and it flows from New Hampshire, all in Vermont, through Massachusetts and Connecticut before reaching the sea. Just off New England's long, jagged coastline are some of the richest fishing ground in the world, even to this day. Winters in New England tend to be long and snowy. Summers are short and warm. This helped early colonists in the region who caught fewer diseases and lived longer than the colonists in Virginia. If you remember from our last screencast, we talked about Jamestown was settled in a very swampy area, and that moist, warm area allowed for a lot of mosquitoes to breed there, and those mosquitoes carried a lot of diseases, so a lot of those early colonists died of malaria. At this point, your notes should look like this. If you need to pause to write these down, please do. If not, you may proceed with me. Describe the Puritan settlement in Massachusetts. Pictured is a town hall meeting, but we will come back to that in just a bit. Similar to the Pilgrims, a group known as the Puritans had disagreements with the Church of England. Although they didn't want to split away from the church, they just wanted to reform the Church of England as a whole. By the 1620s, Puritans were being persecuted by the king in England. This included many Puritan ministers being forced to give up their positions. A number of them eventually decided to make a new life, eventually in North America. Originally, a lot of them had moved to the Netherlands, or Holland, as you may know it. But in 1630, about 900 Puritans formed the Massachusetts Bay Company, which received a charter to establish settlements in what are now Massachusetts and New Hampshire. The Puritans were led by a man by the name of John Winthrop, who was a respected landowner and lawyer. In founding this colony, Puritan leaders believed that their way of life would provide an example to others. As Winthrop said in a sermon during their voyage, "Now the only way is to walk humbly with our God. We must consider that we shall be as a city upon the hill. The eyes of all people are upon us." So he really believed that they were living their lives exactly as God intended them to, and that only them and only them would be the example that people should live by. The main town that the Puritans established in the New World is Boston, which was located on an excellent harbor. By 1643, about 20,000 people lived in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. By the mid-1630s, Massachusetts Bay had elected an assembly, the General Court. Each town sent representatives to the assembly. Voting for this was limited to adult male members of the Puritan Church. Both the General Court and the colony's governor were elected each year. Puritans did not believe in religious toleration, which is recognition that other people have the right to different opinions, and therefore Puritans did not give non-Puritans the same rights. Kind of interesting to think about since they left England because no one tolerated their different religion, but that's a conversation for another time. At this point, your notes should look somewhat like this. Remember, you are free to summarize these and put these in your own words. You do not have to write word for word, but be careful that you are not changing the meaning of what is being given to you. If you're done, you may continue along with me. If not, pause and get what you need. Third objective, identify the new settlements that developed in New England as a result of Puritan religious practices. So disagreements about religion had led to the founding of other colonies in New England as well. So the disagreements in England led to the founding of these original colonies in the New World, but once they're there, disagreements about the religion that they're practicing lead to even more colonies being founded. One of them was founded by a man named Roger Williams, who originally lived in Massachusetts, but he criticized the Puritans for not separating from the Church of England and for not paying for land from Native Americans. It was kind of just taken from them. Um, so he didn't believe that was right. He thought they should have to pay for that land. Roger Williams was forced to leave Massachusetts Bay in 1635. He bought land from the Native Americans and founded a town he called Providence. In 1644, Rhode Island, as this colony became known, received a charter to govern themselves from the king. But it was decided here that Rhode Island would not have an official religion and that members of all faiths were welcome. So this was that religious toleration that was missing in Massachusetts Bay. Anne Hutchinson, a woman also from Boston, questioned some of the Puritans' teachings. She was put on trial and expelled from the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Anne Hutchinson went on to establish settlements in Rhode Island and what is now New York State. Pictured is a painting of Anne Hutchinson actively disagreeing with Puritan leaders. Another Puritan that was forced to leave Massachusetts Bay was a man by the name of Thomas Hooker. Haha, yes, that is his name. He was a minister and he left Massachusetts in 1636 with about 100 people and established the town of Hartford. In the year 1639, they established a representative government, and in 1662, his settlements received an official charter from the King of England for the colony of Connecticut. Another founder, John Wheelwright, was forced to leave Massachusetts for agreeing with Anne Hutchinson. He goes on to establish what would later become the colony of New Hampshire. At this point in our notes, they should look somewhat like this. If you need a second to write these down, please pause. If not, you are free to continue with me. Final objective, explain the changes that took place in the New England colonies in the 1600s. Each Puritan town governed itself by setting up a town meeting, or an assembly of townspeople that decided local issues. Only the male heads of households could participate, but it was helpful. It encouraged democratic ideals. Some of the things that they would do at these town meetings were set local taxes and elect people to run the towns. But it gave everyone an opportunity to speak their mind. New England became a region of towns and villages where neighbors knew one another and participated together in government. New England families earned their livelihoods in many different ways. There were farmers that grew crops, but they also made leather goods and other products. Fishers caught cod and other fish that were shipped to customers in Europe. The shipbuilding industry provided many jobs. By the 1660s, more than 300 ships from New England were fishing off the coast or moving products across the Atlantic. It's just helpful to point out that, yes, there were many professions you could have in New England at this time, but of them, shipbuilding and fishing were the two dominant ones, the most profitable. A Native American by the name of Metacom, or King Philip as he was known to the English, began attacking English settlements to stop their expansion. So since the English had arrived, the population of Native Americans had severely decreased. For example, by 1670, there were only 12,000 Native Americans in New England, and 1/10 of their population was still there 100 years later. Pretty severe drop. In 1675, major conflicts erupt. Eventually, with many deaths on both sides, this does end in 1676 when Metacom was captured and killed. But this war that they fought did leave the English colonies free to expand, basically, after that point. By the 1670s as well, the outlook of New Englanders was changing. There was a new generation of people born in North America. The new generation had lost some of their parents' religious fervor or zeal, as people concentrated on running farms and businesses. In growing towns like Boston, successful merchants were becoming the new community leaders. The English colonies of New England were doing well, but the stern religious rules of the original founders now had less influence over the people who lived among them. So, this is the conclusion of our video, and your notes should look somewhat like this. Again, feel free to summarize. Now remember, of our 4 section objectives, if you cannot accomplish these 4 things, you must either ask a peer for help, rewatch or reread the screencast, read the section, or schedule a conference with me. That is the end of our screencast. I hope you enjoyed. Please tune in next week for our next edition. Thank you, and goodbye.